Hello folks. Well, for just a second, ignore this beautiful coastal view. Instead, take a look at this map right here. This is a very recognizable map. If you belong to this country, you will know exactly what this map is. The unmistakable borders and everything inside should tell you exactly what you need to know about the political geography of this country. If you can believe it or not, we have been to every state on this map. But what do you do when it's all over, when you've completed every single state right here? Well, you go off the mainland and you explore the last two states. Well, what we see in front of us is nothing short of spectacular. Mud flats, which are actually a little more dangerous than they appear, and then a huge body of water, and then another landmass and a few little rigs on the coast. And then in the far distance we see some snow-capped peaks. It's my honor to introduce to you all this special state, our 49th state, Alaska, the last frontier. Sure looks like a barren last frontier, but it's not our last frontier here on the 50 states. You see, 48 states down, 2 to go. This cannot be our last state. Yeah, this is state number 49, not state 50. So I think it's fitting, although the name suggests that it's the last place we should go to. I really think it's better to call this grand tour that we are about to embark on the second to last frontier. Now, geography enthusiasts often argue about whether America's the third or the fourth largest country in the world, but no doubt, it's one of the world's largest countries. And Alaska is a big reason why it ends up on the top of those lists. I mean, take a look at Alaska overlaid on the rest of the continental, or rather, I should say contiguous, US. It's huge. Now the name United States should suggest that we are this one continuous body of political subdivisions, but no, the name is rather political meaning. It's funny, because the largest state in this supposed United States is an exclave. That's where we are. It's Alaska. It borders Canada, but it doesn't border any other state. It's just got its huge landmass far to the northwest of any other state in the country. It's the most northern state in the whole nation. It's the largest, as I've said, and being the largest state in the country, it would imply that there is so much empty land. Yeah, Alaska is just completely devoid of people. It's just all nature, from the mountains to the glacial fjords to Arctic and subarctic plains. Alaska has a lot of nature in it, and over the course of the next 12 or so days, we will get as much of a fair chance to explore this behemoth of a state together. Well, for being the largest state in the country with so much wild, untamed nature and plenty of other destinations and settlements, there's gotta be so many different locations for which to start an adventure. That's what one would think, but it's kind of not the case. You only are really limited to a few destinations to really debut your experience in Alaska. Because of its remote location, most visitors to Alaska will either go by boat or they'll fly to where we are now, Anchorage, the largest city in Alaska, and its industrial, economic, and commercial hub. This is essentially the gateway to Alaska. It's really the only big major city in the whole state. The rest of the population lives in either very small cities like Fairbanks or Juneau, or just in these completely very small villages. So, go figure, Anchorage is probably the most logical point of entry as we debut into the great state of Alaska. That's exactly what happened. I got to Alaska by flight, flying from the Northeast down to Texas up to this great last frontier. Not last night, the night before, and you couldn't really tell what the realistic time was if you weren't looking at your phone or a watch, because the sky would be bright still. It would be 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and it would still kind of look like this. Yeah, that's what happens when you're so far north. Summers are going to be in your favor if you want lots of time, lots of hours of daylight. Anyway, I digress. We're getting off topic. This is going to be a fun trip. I don't know really what to expect. It's going to be a little bit different. I don't have a car or any reliable form of transportation. We're going to have to rely on a lot of public transportation, which is going to be an interesting change. We'll see how that works out. But let us begin our adventure. The second to last frontier, starting here in Anchorage, Alaska. Let's get into it. So how do you even begin to cover Alaska, its culture, its history, its legacy to the greater United States? Well, you gotta start with the first peoples who inhabited Alaska. And of course, with its size, we're gonna have so many different tribes, but you can sort of divide them into a few main groups who lived in approximate regions of Alaska. So you start out with the Athabascan peoples, who comprise a multitude of various ethnic groups. They inhabited the vast interior portions of Alaska. This group included the Dena'ina people, who historically inhabited Anchorage. Yeah, the whole Anchorage area was inhabited by the Dena'ina people. I hope I'm pronouncing all of these names correctly. These names were deviations of the word Dena, which sort of meant people in this shared language family. Even more interesting, the Navajo, or Diné, as they're called, were one of these groups, and actually anthropologists say that the Navajo historically came from this area of interior Alaska and migrated south towards Arizona and New Mexico. Next we have the Yupik or Chupik people. As you can sort of guess, a lot of these related macro groups shared dialects or varieties of similar languages. Ooh, this is a very comfy house. Lots of wood structures, because here in Alaska there's a lot of wood. These Yupik people lived and subsisted on the area surrounding the Yukon Delta. The Yukon River, people know it as one of North America's largest rivers. It flows into western Alaska. Eventually that river will flow and drain into the very northern reaches of the Pacific Ocean, which means there's going to be a lot of sea life, fish, large oceanic mammals. Lots of opportunities, thus, for these people to fish and hunt. Not too far away from the Yukon Delta is the part of Alaska which is quite possibly the coldest part of the entire country, the northern slope. And across these lands lived a related group, the Inupiaq, who, kind of similarly to the other Yupik groups, used the northern coasts to hunt and subsist on the other sea life that was a little farther north than, the other parts of Alaska. Many of these Alaska native groups once fell under the umbrella term Inuit. But today scholars are wondering, is that the correct word to use for such a catch-all term of a bunch of people with various disparate cultures and traditions and historical practices? And then, of course, there's the people of the Aleutian Islands. There's islands along the North Pacific Rim, and these people were the true maritime people. They weren't afraid to hunt these big humpback whales when they needed to, and they would island hop and subsist off of largely the sea life. And lastly, we have the people of the Alaskan southeast, those temperate woodlands. And this is the region of Alaska famous for those totem poles. This is the type of the house these people may have built and lived in. Wow. These people, the Tlingit and the Eyak, to name a few, received the benefit of having a very temperate and lush climate to live in. And so they thrived in an area full of lumber and forest wildlife. And that, everyone, is the briefest of brief outlines on the Alaska Native people who built the foundations for Alaskan culture as we know it. One could go on and on and on about the various subtle differences in culture between groups of these regions, but we don't have time. Luckily, the Alaska Native Heritage Center does a great job of explaining to you all, better than me, some of Alaska's great cultures. And so it's a great interactive, immersive experience as you walk around this loop and discover the wonder of these various displays of village sites you might have seen hundreds of years ago in these traditional Alaskan villages. So for thousands of years, these Alaska natives made the most out of their lives here in this state. And there we are. That's what brings us to Anchorage today. Am I missing something? Oh, right, yeah, I've got to tell a big chapter of this story. Contact. Yeah, this is the point at time, contact, where the lives of these Alaska natives are changed, altered permanently up till today. It was such a transformative period of time. Captain James Cook was an explorer on behalf of the growing British Empire. And so he was the first to map out the coastline of Alaska. As a result, in the process, he encountered many of these Alaska natives. Like many other explorers at the time who were looking westward, he was trying to find the Northwest Passage, a route that was fabled to connect the Atlantic Ocean across the North American landmass all the way through the Pacific Ocean to Asia. Many explorers tried to find this route, but all were unsuccessful. Mapping out the Alaskan coastline is no easy task with all of this state's inlets and peninsulas and precarious waters just to get to the different regions. So, a very accomplished man, a very important figure in Anchorage history. As you can see, we are just a few minutes walk from the downtown area of this great Alaskan city. Let's hop, skip, and jump all the way to the greatest parts of Anchorage, Alaska. Yeah, it's my first time. I'm trying to visit all 50 states. This is number 49. This is number 49 for me, yeah.
So you got Hawaii to go?
Yeah, that's right.
When are you gonna do Hawaii?
In a few weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
State, huh?
Yeah, yeah, it'll be exciting. Ask, how long has this stand been open or in operation?
Over 20 years, yeah.
20 years, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time. Came with the right one.
Well, thank you, yeah. It seems like hot dogs are a ubiquitous way of life here in America. But what if I told you this wasn't your average beefy frank? No. There's only a handful of places in the world where you can get a hot dog with the meat of reindeer. Yeah, you really gotta go up to the Arctic and subarctic territories of the world to even get to know reindeer in person, let alone eat them. But let me also tell you that Anchorage is probably one of the best places in America to get yourself a reindeer dog. There are little shops and stands all over the downtown area, and it's not too expensive. Really, street food is where it's at here in Anchorage. So I figured, let's get ourselves something unique, something local, a reindeer dog. Now, how do I explain this? It's not, you know, this small manufactured processed oily hot dog we're all used to in America. No, it's more of like a kielbasi or like a bratwurst in texture and size. It's a lot more chewy. And furthermore, reindeer might give you the impression that you're gonna be eating something with a gamey aftertaste. And that's actually not true with these. There are farm-raised reindeer with the intention of using them like livestock, like you would for a cow, you know? So there's less of that gamey taste. When you're in Anchorage, don't just settle for the all-American hot dog. Get a reindeer dog. Okay, by now I think we've really ingratiated ourselves, familiarized ourselves with the city of Anchorage as we see it right now. And just one thing to point out, Anchorage should not be considered the big cultural capital of Alaska. I don't know if any city or town really gets that distinction because Alaska's culture is so diverse. It is that economic hub, but it's kind of merely that, a hub for functionality purposes. Essentially, this is just the largest city in Alaska. Sure, there's a little bit more of the touristic appeal because this is that main hub from which people get to other parts of Alaska they truly want to see for nature or culture. So there's, you know, fun little art exhibits like that totem pole up ahead, and there's timelines listed for people's interest. So it has enough for people's curiosity. Something I find extremely humorous is that this is a city of 290,000. It's Alaska's largest city. You'd think there's going to be a lot of infrastructure to help either the locals or the tourists get around, but that may be not the case because in most other cities you'll find these buttons that say, you know, press to cross. As this is suggesting I do right now, but I'm not going to do it right now to demonstrate this. But don't you think there should be a button, and when you press that button it says, wait, almost in a menacing tone? Well, I have yet to find an actual button that does that here in Anchorage. Is this something that Anchorage just removed recently? Is this just how it functions, where there's lights and crosswalks, but nothing to really help you feel better about the waiting time? Have you ever heard of the Iditarod race? It's one of Alaska's and the Arctic's most memorable festivals. Bring a jacket though, it's very, very cold. This is all about dog mushing, dog sledding. It's a race through much of the Alaskan interior, and it starts right in this district of Anchorage, the mushing district. A little less known internationally, but still just as fun to watch and celebrate, is the Fur-Rondy, dating back to the 1930s. Originally it was an exposition on fur trapping, but then they incorporated dog sledding, and it's just as celebrated here in Anchorage. Anchorage holds 40% of Alaska's population. So, just like any other major city, it's going to have its major city features. And that comes in various features, forms, and sizes. So, of course, the 40% of Alaska also wants to be just as connected with the rest of the country. So you're going to have those big name chains and franchises and shopping malls. At the same time, you're going to have those big city problems like crime and homelessness. Okay, this is the largest elevator I have seen in a while, if not my whole life. Interesting. This is the Anchorage Museum. The greatest point to learn about Anchorage, the city's history, development, legacy, culture, what have you. Wow, look at that. Those are the Chugach Mountains. Great views from the 4th floor. I thought that this was a museum covering Anchorage lore. But it seems like there's more to this museum than just the little city of Anchorage. I think what you could learn here transcends a good part of the globe, the whole Arctic. This is President Dwight D. Eisenhower, our 34th president from 1953 to 1961. He did a lot of stuff, including building our massive highway infrastructure. But to Alaskans, he is more remembered for giving Alaska statehood. That's right, in 1959, Alaska was declared the 49th state in America. Yeah, better late than never. There were some people alive today who were alive before Alaska was given statehood. But there has been so much history, so much that has transpired in this now state before it was given this distinction. First, Alaska underwent colonization by the Russian Empire. It was a colonization that still has cultural ripples to this day, namely adherence to the Russian Orthodox faith in many parts of Alaska, much more than any other place in the US. Then it was purchased by the US. William Seward was an important guy in American politics, and he decided to buy Alaska. He thought it was a worthwhile purchase, but everybody was laughing at him, calling him a fool for buying such a chunk of ice. It was known as Seward's icebox or Seward's folly, this land, Alaska. But Seward got the last laugh, as gold was found here in 1888, which spurred a massive trans-state railroad whose Anchorage depot is right there. We'll be understanding a little more of this railroad in time to come, but that's what you guys should know. The railroad spurred Anchorage's initial growth. It went from a tent city to a city of skyscrapers. It's now Anchorage is the largest city in Alaska, of course, but there's still, you know, tents over here. There's a lot of tent cities in certain districts of Anchorage. It's always going to attract folk to move to a place for a good chance to strike it rich. We learned that a lot in the Best of the Most West tour. It happened the same way for Alaska. And with the railroad in construction that would take people from here to the north of Alaska, and of course the construction of this railroad is going to demand a lot of labor. Big incentive invites so many people to Anchorage. During World War II, Anchorage was a massive strategic base of operations. To this day, there are numerous Air Force bases around not only Anchorage, but all over Alaska. It's a great strategic location, not just for military operations, but also for transportation and commercial operations. Ted Stevens Airport, the airport I arrived at, and the airport anybody would arrive in if they were going and flying towards Anchorage, is one of the world's busiest airports for freight and cargo transportation. And it's because Anchorage is strategically located very close to the majority of the world's developed cities through the Arctic passageways. So of course, the airport's going to be busy all the time. Maybe not for passengers, but definitely for cargo. Unfortunately enough, a few years after Alaska got its statehood, a traumatic event occurred, the likes of which had not been seen in Anchorage's history. Anchorage sits on the Ring of Fire, which means it is prone to a lot of seismic activity, but despite that, the residents were caught by surprise when a 9.2 magnitude earthquake struck upon the southern portion of the state. Starting in Valdez, the seismic effects took hold very, very strongly in Anchorage. The ground was shaking, debris went everywhere. Mudslides were commonplace to be seen during that event. The people here thought the world was coming to an end. This was the fourth most powerful earthquake in the Earth's recorded history. Sadly, many died. Most not as a result of the earthquake, but rather the after effects, the tsunami, which not only hit Alaska, but Oregon and California. Yeah, water can do some damage at such a far distance. And it's an event that the people of Anchorage will not forget as long as they are alive. Well, believe it or not, I took a nap at my hotel room for a few hours. It's a few hours later. Not that we can really tell from the look of the sky. It looks like on any other place in America, early to mid-afternoon. But that's just how it is up here at 61 degrees north latitude. Gotta love those 20, 21 hour days here. Yeah, this is the farthest north we've ever come on the coverage project. And believe me, as the trip advances, as later in time comes along, we will be breaking that latitude record. That's Anchorage for you. A long day here, well spent. From its inception as a ramshackle tent city to its incorporation in 1920 to today in time where we see a metropolis of great size. Anchorage and its surrounding environs has gone through a lot. And we're only truly beginning our adventures in Alaska on the second to last frontier tour. If you find the idea of mythic, wild frontiers captivating, this is going to be the tour for you. There's nothing like Alaska in the entire United States. It's almost like visiting a separate country. And for that, because this trip is just going to be kind of different, the format of these videos might change a little bit. I don't know for sure, but there may be a little potential for me to tweak how I decide to film and what I film when I film. We'll just play it by ear. Yeah. And you'll be able to see that more evidently, more clearly as we continue into the true heartland of the state. It kind of seems very normal, very much like a traditional American city here, but that's just Anchorage. It's not supposed to really represent true Alaskan culture. It's just supposed to be that hub in South Central Alaska from which everybody decides where they want to visit, where they want to go on expeditions here in this rugged, huge state. I mean, this is the gateway to the Alaskan mainland. What do you expect? It's gonna seem pretty normal for what it feels like to be in a city. That is, unless you consider your first destination the Alaskan Panhandle. Then it's a bit different. If you start out in Juneau or Skagway or wherever in that part of the state, okay, ignore what I say. But this is truly just the beginning of our great Alaskan tour. I'm very excited. Anyway, I haven't even forgotten. What do you guys think of when it comes to Alaska? What comes to mind? This is definitely a state that falls well outside the traditions of what normal states are supposed to symbolize, so people know about Alaska one way or another. Maybe people know it for its miserably cold climate. And yes, it does get very, very cold up here. Northern latitudes, extreme latitudes here in the northern hemisphere do that to a climate. But Alaska is a huge state and it has a diversity of climates, from temperate rainforests to very dry plains to subalpine mountains to alpine mountains. This is home to the largest mountain in North America, so of course there's going to be that montane atmosphere at some altitudes, at some points. Speaking of the physical geography, Alaska, it's huge by a long shot. It's the largest in the country. You can't fit roads everywhere, especially when it's not even worth it to repair roads in the Arctic of the state. Yeah, there are some highways that connect major areas of population or economic importance, but for the most part, it's just the bush. In the winter, actually, snowmobiles are a very, very important mode of transportation from getting to one point to another. The rivers will freeze over, and so that will allow people to use a different form of highway. The wildlife is certainly abundant and mighty in this state. When left alone, away from people, wildlife, the megafauna thrive here in Alaska. You know, so there's the elk and deer, and then there's moose and reindeer. And of course, I can't forget about giant grizzlies here in Alaska. No, sir. Lots and lots of wildlife in the last frontier. And as we talked about at the beginning of today, you might think of the numerous cultures. The Alaska natives from all over the state inhabit various areas. They still are here in large number, larger than ever. Thank goodness we can live in a time and age when these native populations and these beautiful cultures are going through a cultural renaissance. So I always want to mention that when I go to places of native importance, native history, of course. And finally, I guess the most quirky fact that you might think of if you really study the political geography of these states across the country. Alaska is one of 2 states which technically do not have counties. All over the US, states are subdivided into counties, various small little fiefdoms, in a way. That is not the case for 2. We talked about that in Louisiana. They have parishes. And in Alaska, they have boroughs. And this state is so large that despite the 19 boroughs it does have, the government kind of gave up with distributing the rest of the land into boroughs. They just gave up and called it an unorganized borough. It's huge, and it's larger than 10, 15 states combined. Technically, that unorganized borough is not even, by legal jurisdiction, an actual borough. That's just the naming convention. So if you venture to Alaska, make sure you don't ask which county you're in, make sure you ask which borough you are in. Anyway, speaking of daylight hours and times of day, I'm still struggling to decompress from my long flight to the west to Alaska. In a matter of hours, I changed 4 different time zones. In Alaska, we are technically 4 time zones behind Eastern Standard Time, and I haven't really fully recuperated yet. So that makes me very, very tired. The fact that the daylight is pulling a massive trick on us here in Alaska does another number on me. So I gotta make sure I get some nice rest before tomorrow, because tomorrow is gonna be a big day as well. So I'll leave it off at that. Hopefully you enjoyed today's long video here in Anchorage, the starting point to our second to last frontier. With that said, I leave you off with a great view of Delaney Park here in Anchorage. A great expansive field of grass overlooking the beautiful skyscrapers of the city proper, a nice flag in the distance, and the great Alaskan Chugach Mountains far off ahead. More travels to come. I will see you at the next location. Get hyped, everyone. After this amazing tour, we got one more state. You better believe it.